The newest legendary event, Perfection Personified, gives us the opportunity to add Lucius, the first Emperor's Children character, to your team. Today we'll deep dive into it to make sure you get the Champion of Slaanesh to the highest rarity possible. We have yet another new legendary event joining the game. The Perfection Personified event starts on August the 10th and allows you to open the first Emperor's Children character, Lucius, who is a champion of Slaanesh. And now we have an opportunity to make sure we really maximize our gains from the event. This is the first new Chaos faction in well over a year, so you'll definitely need to be jumping in fully to get him. Again, I'm posting this guide as early as possible to give you the maximum amount of time to work on your teams. This is another really difficult event following on from Dante and Trajan's, so we're going to have to work really hard on it together. What do I think of the event? Well, I actually think this is the hardest event that we've ever had, and it might be a little bit deceptive as to why. It wasn't until I started pulling it apart that I realized it's the first time I've ever had such little crossovers between battles. And that means we're going to have to care for every single token we use and make sure it's worthwhile, especially if you're free to play. The unstoppable and close combat battles are incredibly challenging because they prioritize characters that most of us will never even have looked at, like Certus, Sygex, Shadowsun, Darkstrider. Outside of Certus for the Indomitus Elite campaigns, these are characters that you shouldn't really have been leveling too much unless you really like them personally. Then we have the Black Legion and heavy weapon damage battles. Again, they're filled with characters that we won't have to very high levels. So yeah, overall, I really rate this as the hardest legendary event there's been, so I hope Lucius is worth it. To see that, I'll be doing a deep dive into the champion a little bit closer to his actual release. But for now, it's good that I'm here to help you prioritize the characters, so let's dive in. As always with my legendary events, the strategy for these is to sit down with my current roster, my Google Planner sheets that are linked in the video description below, and just play around with it, looking to see how I can bring my team to the next level. What does next level mean? Well, it depends on where you are right now. To open a legendary event character, realistically you're going to need at least 6 or 7 gold 1 characters, and of course the more the better. So the first level to reach is definitely getting some of the best characters in the game leveled up to gold 1. Some of the most powerful characters you can look at are Rotbone and Maladis, Aleph Null and Revas, Tangida and Actus, Isabella and 2 tanks, and Tyrant Guard, Janezar and Incissus as a trio. Generally, my advice though is to focus on healing, then tanks, then these important legendary characters. After that, I always focus on bringing all my teams to Silver 1 with a couple of Gold 1 characters in each team. Currently, I'm at the stage where I'm bringing all my characters to Gold 2 so that I can add one more star to my legendary characters. Finally, the top players are all working to complete every single battle in a legendary event, but that requires a crazy amount of diamond characters. So let's stick with looking at what characters are looking useful for you to level for this event, and you can work out for yourselves which of those levels you are at. So let's start with the absolute quickest way to open the character, which means getting to 12,500 points without any purchases in the first event. In most tracks, this will only use a few characters, and so it's more for the longer term players than for us newer players. For the rest of us, we're going to be able to use the full 5 character method as usual, and so I won't spend too long going through this as it's really for more experienced players who generally know what they're doing anyway, but I'm going to show you the most mathematically efficient teams and let you decide how to play them. For this event, if you've got any of the following characters at Diamond 3 with decent skill levels and equipment, then you should be able to push through to Battle 14 on all tracks, and with these points combined, it'll take you well beyond the 12,500 point mark. Now, I'm not suggesting this is easy, especially with a lot of these tracks only letting you use 3 characters, but it is mathematically possible. And at the very least, you'll get very far advanced in the first event, and then you can spend the others just making sure that you get Lucius his wings. The teams you're going to need are as follows. For the Alpha track, it's Angrax, Harkin, and Volt. For the Black Legion, minimum 4 hits, and no bolter battles. For the Beta track, it's Calandus, Certus, and Sarquel. For the heavy weapon, physical, and max 2 hit battles. And in the Gamma track, it's Darkstrider, Neurothrope, Revas, Shadowsun, and Shosul for the close combat and no power damage battles. And I will admit, I don't even know if you can even win stage 14, especially with that beta track team, because it's so squishy, but at least it's going to take you a fair way through the tracks, especially if you have them highly leveled. And that's going to save you a fair few tokens later, which is actually the most important thing here for most of us. Now let's get into the meat of the game. We're going to begin with the alpha track. We can't take any Xenos characters as we're fighting against the Eldari. And the battles are as follows. Black Legion for 85 points, bolter damage for 95 points, minimum 4 hits for 45 points, flying for 90 points, and no bolter damage for 60 points. And like I said previously, there's very few crossovers possible. And so with every single one of these tracks, we are going to have to split it into 4. And so the best that we can do here is to split it into the minimum hits and no bolter damage battles for 105 points. And then the rest you have to tackle them by themselves. So it'll be the Black Legion, then the flying, then the bolter damage battles. And so starting with the minimum 4 hits and no bolter damage for 105 points, there's actually a total of 15 characters here that you can use. And so I'm not going to bore you all with reading through everything. Instead, I'm just going to shout out the ones that I feel are the most important ones to be looking into for this battle. That is Angrax, Karn, Nauseous Rodbone, Toth, and Rask. And the idea with this team is really simple. We build into a full chaos team. In the early stages, Angrax can dive straight at the holes where the enemies arrive from and just batter them as they start walking away from him. Later, he can stay close to the team and focus turns more to Nauseous Rotbone healing to keep everyone alive, Rask shielding when he kills something to keep everyone alive, and then Toth just keeping himself alive. And then we can just have Karn running around like a maniac, killing 3 or 4 Eldari every turn until he finally dies or kills your own team. It's an incredibly solid and wonderful start to the alpha track. We then follow this up with another easy choice, and that's a Black Legion track, because you only have 5 champions to use here. It's Abaddon, Angrax, Archimatos, Harkin, and Volk. And you'll really need to overlevel this team because it has no heals and Archimatos spawns won't last very long. So if you want to succeed with getting Lucius his wings, you better hope the developers' balance in the team is on point, or you're going to need to bring a couple of these up to Diamond 1 at very least. The developers themselves have said that Black Legion is a focus for them to be improved, and we've seen a little tweak to Harkin recently. Let's hope the rest of them get it, because some of these are really desperately needing an improvement too. Next, we take a look at the flying for 90 points. Here you can choose 5 from the following 9 characters: Actus, Ahriman, Bellator, Celestine, Dante, Harkin, Matanio, Thaumachus, and Yazagor. And for this one I feel it's really tough because I don't really see any proper synergy within this team. But with this in mind, I would probably take something like this: Actus, Bellator, Celestine or Dante, Harkin, and Matanio. And the thinking is that if we take Bellator, Celestine, and Matanio, then at least we can have regular spawns to distract the enemy for earlier levels. Matanio himself is actually used in a bunch of other events, and so he's quite an important character to be leveling generally for legendary events. And Bellator spawns may even last for a while until the later levels too. The reason I have Celestine or Dante is because they're both legendary characters, and maybe you only have one or the other, if any at all. But I prefer Celestine here personally to Dante, but I know from my top 10 Imperials list just how many of you love the gold-suited one. Then Harkin has recently been tweaked, and so we may as well get some levels into him generally. He is one of the more important characters for this event. Finally, Actus can at least self-heal if he takes a beating, and you might have already leveled him a bit as part of the Guildraid Admech team. But let me know, what would you do with this one? Do you have different ideas as success here? Obviously, it's going to depend a little bit on the characters you have and what you've got leveled, but I think there's a lot of different ways you can play this, and so I'd love to hear what you think. Finally, we have the bolter damage battle for 95 points. Here, it's another one with 14 characters, and I really do find it amazing that with so many different characters and 2 different sets of battles, we have so little overlap. But anyway, this is a much easier one to pick from because it's Imperials, it's bolter, and yep, that means it's time for the Isabella Battle Ball. For those of you who are new to legendary events, this basically means that you pick Isabella, you stick her in the middle of a group of bulky men who can absorb everything that gets thrown at them, and then for anything they can't deal with, Isabella gives them a little bit of healing to top them up. So for this team, I would take something like Bellator, Burchard, Calgar, Isabella, and Lucian. Calgar can obviously be swapped out for someone else if you don't have him, as he's a legendary character, and even then you still have Bellator and Burchard to be able to tank. Lucian is there because he's one of the highest scoring champions in this event, so I figured we may as well make the most of him. And as long as you don't use his ult, he might even be useful. So to bring that all together, it looks like this. So if we move on to the beta track, we can't take any Chaos or Tyranid characters because we're fighting against the Tyranids. The battles are as follows: heavy weapon damage for 95 points, piercing damage for 65 points, unstoppable for 95 points, physical damage for 45 points, and max 2 hits for 75 points. And again, there's very few opportunities for us to split it up in a good way, and so we're going to split it up into heavy weapon damage and physical damage for 140 points, unstoppable for 95 points, max 2 hits for 75 points, and piercing damage for 65 points. And so, again, we can see just how difficult this event is going to be, with so many times where we need to individually focus on a track and that there isn't any overlap between them. I feel the developers have really gone to town with this one. But let's start with a heavy weapon damage and physical damage for 140 points, which is the highest scoring combination in this event. We don't have any options except the following 5 characters: Calandus, Certus, Sarquel, Sygex, and Vindicta. And oh boy, that's a really crap team, isn't it? What on earth are we supposed to do with this? We have 3 snipers, one of whom is the most expensive to level in the game in Certus, and then we have Vindicta, who's just as likely to burn her own teammates as the enemies, and we have whatever the heck Sygex is. I'll bet barely any of you have him leveled up, and most of you have probably forgot he even exists. So the best I can say is that you need to overlevel the heck out of this team, and honestly I have no idea how you're going to complete stage 14 even while doing that. Next up we have the Unstoppable Battle for 95 points, and if you thought the last team was tough, this one's just as tough. You can choose 5 from the following 7: Aryak, Exeter Row, Lucian, Niall, Tank Smasher, the Pattermine, and Ulf. And I would narrow this down to Aryak, Lucian, the Pattermine, Tank Smasher, and Ulf. But honestly, I feel this is really difficult even with a team that looks okay on paper. We do have some beef in Aryak and Tank Smasher, and I think that some of you might be surprised at the usefulness of the Pattermine, who can heal himself and create some big spawns. He is also one of the higher scoring champion in this event, along with Lucian, so both of them are really worth it, and you're going to see me add them in a few teams. Ulf is always fun to have in the team as well, although I always feel he's a lot more squishy than he should be. I would have liked to take someone like Niall for his Terminator armor, but honestly, I just can't justify taking someone that most of us don't have leveled up, and I certainly don't. Generally, you only take him if you're a furry lover, or if you haven't worked out yet how underwhelming he is in most modes. And the next is finally an easier one. It's a max 2 hits for 75 points, and we have an immense selection of 31 different characters, but can you believe that we can't build a single decent crossover team with any of the others? I certainly can't, but somehow the developers have pulled off the almost impossible. Anyway, for this, I think there's a bunch of different options here. Personally, I'd go for the mechanical team as follows: Actis, Exeter Row, Golgorts, Makotep, and Tangida, and that's just a really great team. Actis and Makotep will keep the others alive, but the key here is Tangida and his Skitari, because they've got me so much further in events than nearly any other champion that I've actually built up. And when Actis lets him call in another one every turn, it soon turns this into an easy battle, so please do invest in Tangida if you love legendary events. Finally, in the beta track, we have the piercing damage battle for 65 points, and here we can take 5 from the following 10: Athana, Calandus, Dante, Eldrion, Incissus, Janzar, Carrion, Shosil, Trajan, and Ulf. And for this event, there are a few new champions who you can pick later when you've got them leveled, maybe for the second event, but I would go probably something like this: Dante or Eldrion, Incissus, Janzar, Shosil, and Ulf. But for me, this is really awkward, because where's my Tyrant Guard tank? Every piercing battle I ever fight, he's the first choice on my list. But unfortunately he's blocked because we're fighting the Tyranids, and that's a real shame for this team because they lack a proper tank. So we'll just have to go out fighting. Dante is a newer champion, and because some of you might not have him leveled, I would personally go with Mr. Old Reliable Eldrion. For the Tyrant Guard replacement, I'm going to chuck in Ulf, although, like I just said, he's a lot more aggressive and is a bit more squishy than the big bulky Tyranid, but at least you have Incissus to heal, and Janzar is an off-tank for fighting melee champions, which there are a lot of in this event. So to bring it all together, it looks like this. So if we move on to the Gamma track, we can't take any Imperial characters because we're fighting against the Ultramarines supported by the Astra Militarum. The battles are Close Combat for 105 points, Psychic for 80 points, No Power Damage for 35 points, Minimum 5 hits for 95 points, and Physical Damage for 60 points. And here we are again with another 4-way split for the battles. This time it's split up into Close Combat and No Power Damage for 140 points, and then the others are just by themselves, Minimum 5 hits for 95 points, Psychic for 80 points, and Physical Damage for 60 points. And starting with the Close Combat and No Power Damage, we only have 5 characters to pick from here, and they are Darkstrider, Neurothrope, Revas, Shadowsun, and Shosil. And outside of Revas and Shosil, this is just a crap team. Only Tau lovers are really going to have Shadowsun and Darkstrider leveled up. Although with their recent tweaks, perhaps they're a little bit more useful in this fight. Personally, I don't see it, and I really don't want to invest any time in them. For Neurothrope, many of you'll have him leveled up for the Neurothrope Guild Raid team, so he should do okay until the later levels. But I really struggle with him in legendary events, because every time I put him in, he just lets me down. It's too easy to overwhelm him, and then his close combat weakness really stops him from doing damage, and he's unable to do his smite double attack. Now, of course, that is the whole problem with this battle. You are going to get overwhelmed, and all of these champions are going to deal less damage, and without a healer like Aleph Null, you can't sustain indefinitely. So yeah, this is going to be a really tough one. Moving to the minimum 5 hits battles for 95 points, and thankfully this is much more like it. You can pick 5 from the following 10 characters: Aleph Null, On-Shi, Immospec, Lucius, Mogin Ra, Revas, the Pattermine, Toth, Volk, and Winged Prime. And here I would take Aleph Null, On-Shi, Revas, the Pattermine, and Toth. And I'm really looking at this one to pick up some serious points because it has one of the most powerful duos in legendary events, which is Aleph Null and Revas. You stick Revas down, and then you have Aleph Null right behind him in as safe a place as possible to keep them both leveled. Then you can use the Pattermine and Toth as defensive partners either side of them, basically just absorbing as much as they can until they fall. And finally, On-Shi will let you drop a bunch more drones and Overwatch again for Revas, which will hopefully mean you can actually wipe out 2 whole waves of enemies killed instead of just 1. But either way, definitely invest heavily into Aleph Null and Revas because they come in clutch in every single legendary event that I talk about. Next, we have the Psychic battle for 80 points, and here we choose 5 from the following 10: Abraxas, Ahriman, Archimatos, Eldrion, Neurothrope, Thaumachus, the Pattermine, Typhus, Zybia, and Yazagor. And this is a tough one, but I would probably go with Abraxas, Eldrion, the Pattermine, Typhus, and Zybia. Again, we have the Pattermine here, and so you're starting to see his usefulness in this event. I would back him up with Abraxas and Zybia, who can spawn in characters, and actually I keep Zybia as far back as possible in legendary events, just acting like a mobile spawn generator as much as possible. Eldrion is a solid pick, as most of us will have him leveled to a good amount, and the truth is there isn't much better an option here anyway. While Typhus is one of my favourite beefy characters in the game, he can really take a pounding in this battle and walk out unscathed. Finally, for this event, we have the physical damage battle for 60 points. And here we can pick 5 from the following 9: Calandus, Darkstrider, Gibascraps, Macer, Makotep, Neurothrope, Snotflogger, Tyrant Guard, and Yazagor. And thankfully we finished off with a really solid team that looks like this: Calandus, Gibascraps, Makotep, Snotflogger, and Tyrant Guard, which is just a lovely team to get you far into the stages. Starting with Tyrant Guard, who's my favourite tank in the game, and you just have him stuck in the middle of everyone as a linchpin of this team. Then Snotflogger will keep pooping out little grots and is generally quite tanky himself, while Calandus is a great sniper who can even deal a bit of melee aggressiveness by killing someone who attacks him in melee, providing of course that he doesn't get overwhelmed. Then finally, Gibascraps can drop his grot tank, Makotep can keep it alive, and Gibascraps can keep Makotep and the grot tank alive, which is really nice. So to bring it all together, it looks like this. And as always, that is an overwhelming amount of data, and you would need so many different characters again. So let me summarize this for you to help you maximize your points and hopefully work out a plan to bring Lucius into your lineup. First, I always start with the healers relevant to this event. This time, the most important healers are Actus and Aleph Null, but I will just say that all healers are generally important for legendary events, so just get on to leveling them to gold 1 at the very least. And we do use a few more here overall with Isabella, Incisus, Rotbone, Makotep, all appearing in different battles. Next, I work on the tanks, and here we're looking at Revas, as always, Angrax, and Toth. After that, I would then work on characters that can gain the most points in this event and are always very relevant. Here, it's the Patermine, Ulf, Lucian, Shosil, and Calandus. And then finally, I'm going to talk about a new category for you, which is that there are characters that you are really going to need to consider leveling that you probably haven't done so already, and they are Darkstrider, Shadowsun, Harkin, Volt, Certus, and Sygex. So that's a lot of characters for you to focus on. Maybe even the last list is too overwhelming for you. If that's the case, just pick 3 or 4 of those characters you think you'd like to play and get them leveled to gold 1 before pushing on into the next events for him when they come around again. All the best with the event, and let me know if it helped you unlock Lucius when the event does come around.